session last night.
Sorry.
I really like Josh. I've been supporting him as a hiring manager for a number of years. I think he's pretty thoughtful in regards to hiring and setting ourselves up for success. I think if we look at the lack of turnover that we've had as an organization, and probably that's one reason why. So I do have another presentation here to kind of go through. I can't recall. I am not a Zoom user, and I'm very sorry. Where do I go to share a specific tab? Oh, there it is. Now that it's right there in front of me. Sorry. I'm going to do this and share. All right. Everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Awesome. Cool. So this session, yesterday was more so about the technical interview, how to prepare for that in regards to hiring manager and what expectations possibly are. Today, we're taking a slightly different approach, right? And we're talking more general behavioral components, right? That despite that's less technical, but how you can prepare to sell yourself, because that's effectively what you're doing. So there are a number of videos to kind of go through with this as well. Hopefully they work out. There are a few that I'm going to gloss over. This is a little bit of a longer presentation. I will share it out so you can kind of circle back to them if you'd like. But with that said, let me kick us off here. We all know the different types of interviews that are available, right? Phone, video, live. They're all happening these days, right? The video interview actually is a little bit different than it was when we initially built out this presentation. We don't typically see pre-recorded asks these days. I think the market found that a little off-putting, which is thankful, because I think it is also off-putting. But we do have phone interviews, right, that we need to be clear on. Even some of these bullets I think do make a great sense. Make sure that you do have a good, quiet connection. It is always disturbing to an interviewer if there's a significant amount of background noise. It makes it a little bit more difficult to conduct a conversation. Try to find yourself in a quiet spot. If you can't, you can't, right? It is what it is, but do what you can. Dress the part. I think that actually is applicable, right? There is science behind the idea of taking a call in a suit versus taking a call in your robe. Those are obviously two extremes, but pretend like you actually are going to be there in person, and it does put you in a little slightly different mentality. The live interviews in regards to video, this is where a lot of things are happening today, right? It is a little bit more difficult to get used to talking to a camera and talking at a person through a video stream, but do your best. Make sure the lighting is correct. Make sure your background is as good as it possibly can. Now we have digital backgrounds, will certainly help. But sit up straight, dress the part, and expect delays, right? That does in fact happen. The one thing that I will say, and we're going to get back to this or get to this in a different slide as well, when it comes to interviews that are going to be over the web, right, and video interviews, try to log in a few minutes early versus show up right on time, because you might very well have computer issues, right? You might have issues with making sure that your audio is working or your video is working. And if you have the opportunity to test that out earlier, that'd be great. Now, of course, it depends upon the service, right? If you have to be let into a meeting or what, but it's always good to be early, right? To some extent. Now we've got the in-person interviews. We're returning to those, right? Despite the Omicron virus or variant spreading its wings, people are still getting back out there and getting out in person. You like a phone interview, well, obviously not a phone interview, but like a video interview, I do think it is worthwhile to be on time. And by on time, I do mean a little bit early, but you don't want to be too early, right? The thought here is to show up 5 minutes right before your interview is about to start. I always do recommend, showing up or being in the area. Go to a coffee shop around the corner, right? If you're there 15 minutes early, instead of actually showing up and waiting in the waiting room. It just makes it a little bit easier for those you're going to be interviewing for or interviewing with. It doesn't put on any sort of pressure. Just to show up with the right amount of earliness, if you will. There's the one-on-ones and there's the panel interview. The best thing that you can do is ask your recruiter, the hiring manager, whoever that is setting up the interview, like what you should expect. They should be pretty forthcoming in regards to the folks that you're talking to and what each session involves. You want to be able to prepare for yourself, prepare for that mentally as much as you possibly can. And most organizations are going to be pretty transparent in what you can expect when you come on site, or again, if you do it via video. The stay calm is easier said than done, right? Obviously, interviewing is painstaking, right? And it can be a little bit nerve-wracking, but do your best to, take a few breaths, bring some water, stay calm, and do your best to enjoy the conversation. So there's a significant amount of research, right, that shows that a significant amount of time should be put into each interview. And this goes into a lot of different things, right? I know 4 hours might seem like an awful lot, but a lot of this could be reused, right, regurgitated across your different discussions. But it's not just about knowing the company and knowing the role, but it's also being comfortable about yourself, right? And being able to talk about yourself. And a lot of what you've been preparing for over this cohort as we started at the very beginning, kind of identifying networking opportunities. And now you're talking about building out your resumes. You want to be able to talk to yourself, your capabilities, your strengths, and how they pertain to a specific organization. And as every organization is going to be a little bit different, you just want to make sure that you're fully prepared. Talk to the mirror, right? It works, right? It might seem a little silly, but practice some questions. Looking at yourself in the mirror, it really is a legit thing. I do recommend that you try it. I also do recommend that you take a look at this HBR video. That's Harvard Business Review on personal brand. I'm going to skip over it tonight, but it is a very worthwhile read, or not read, but listen, because it does talk through ways to best put your foot forward as a solid candidate and who you are as a person. All right, so I'm going to go to this video now. This is the getting into the generic behavioral questions that you most likely will get, or to some extent some variations. This one in particular is what are your greatest strengths? Hopefully people don't ask that anymore directly, but they might have some sort of variation. But it is a question that you will in fact get, and you want to make sure that you're going to be able to answer it. Hopefully this works. That's a good job. We don't need to watch this whole thing. Can you all hear this?
Yeah.
No. There's when you share the video, someone said before that there's like a button that you can share audio.
I think it might be. Is that true? I feel like this happened to me once before, and it was because I was on. It was on my secondary screen versus my. Leave this over here.
Yeah, if you go to the share, there's like an advanced thing that allows for like video, audio. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Thanks for being my help. I'm just gonna hit this real fast. Oh wait, dummy. Appreciate your patience all. All right, so you can see this again, right? All right, I'm gonna just real quickly hit play, and if that doesn't work, then fun times. I swear I've done this before. Yay or nay? No? Okay. All right. So I need to go to Zoom meeting here, remote control, participants chat more, share computer sound. That could have accommodated that real easy.
James, do you want me to try to play this video if you have it somewhere? Did we lose James? James, I'm not sure if we could hear you anymore. Can you? Is it just me?
I can't hear him either.
Yeah.
I think he's frozen.
Yeah, he was sounding a little laggy earlier.
Yeah, I think his screen's gray for me.
Yeah, he might have had to drop out of the meeting to, I think he was installing something, but let's see if we try to find this video. Let me pause the recording.
To go here, and I'm going to skip past this video because it's butchered at this point. But it is worthwhile to kind of talk through ways to answer that generic question and what employers or interviewers are probably looking for as they ask that question. This is a good one, right? This is actually the greatest weaknesses question. This is led by an engineer and kind of what he, if that question does come up, what he feels he's looking for or what others are going to.
Hi, this is episode 17 of Cron.
Does that jive? Can you guys hear that? Hopefully. All right,
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
I'm your host, Jordan Hudgens. I'm a Ruby dev and the CTO of the DevCamp platform. On Tuesdays, I cover various stages of preparing for a coding interview. And today I'm going to talk about the best way to answer the question of what's your greatest weakness? To be 100% honest, I'm not a huge fan of this question, because to me, it's a lose-lose type of scenario where if the applicant says a true weakness and is completely honest, they probably won't get the job. But if they lie and they just make something up that's not true, it's going to be evident very quickly. However, throughout the years, I have been asked this question before in interviews, so I thought it'd be a good one to prepare for. Since I've been on both sides of the interview chair, both being the applicant and also being someone who is hiring for a team, I wanted to put together a comprehensive list of the worst ways to answer it, why, and then the best ways to answer this question and what that will tell the interviewer. Here are some bad answers to your greatest weakness. A bad answer is saying that you have a hard time saying no. This will say that you are weak and will take on too many projects, typically resulting in poor performance. The next way to answer this question poorly is to say that you have a hard time staying on a single task. This means you should probably either learn how to focus or that you should be an entrepreneur. Working for a company usually means long hours on repetitive tasks, and if someone is bouncing from project to project, they're not going to be a good asset to the team. Another poor approach to answering this question is saying that you can be arrogant. I had a professor in grad school, Dr. Richard Gelfond, who's one of the most brilliant computer scientists I've ever known, who said this about arrogance. Being arrogant occasionally doesn't matter, but it's never good. An arrogant employee won't be able to work well with others and will have a hard time taking correction or learning anything new because they already know it all. Now let's go over some good strategies for answering the greatest weakness question. One answer would be to say that you can be slow to take action. This is an interesting answer because it could be a bad approach if you leave it at this, since it might tell the interviewer that you are timid, which would be a poor character trait. However, if you follow it up by saying that you are very detailed and that before you start a task, you want to have a clear strategy for how to move forward, that is an employee I want to have on my team. Another good approach would be to say that you can be overly critical on yourself. This will tell the interviewer that you care about your work and that doing it well is very important to you. Make sure to follow it up with how you're working on yourself and that you are still working on being a craftsman at your work, but to not get too down on yourself for irrelevant reasons. Another good answer could be to say that you have a tendency to be quiet. This is one of my favorite things to hear, assuming that the individual follows it up by saying that they can be quiet because he or she thinks that it's more important to listen to all of the details of a project or challenge before giving an answer. This tells me that the individual is going to be detail-oriented and won't miss key items because they were too busy thinking about what they were going to say next. I hope these strategies help you properly answer the "what's your greatest weakness" interview question, and good luck with the interview.
So I think actually that's all sound advice, but I think the biggest takeaway for me, and I think it's the same for the greatest weakness or the greatest strength. It's really the follow-up, right? It's the way that you describe, right, or talk about it. When it comes to the weakness one, I don't ask that question. I do ask most folks though, what do you think you're genuinely bad at? Like, what are you bad at? All right. And you get some pretty frank answers, but what I'm really looking, I don't give a crap what you're bad at. What I really want to know is how are you looking to address that deficiency, right? Like, have you taken steps, right, to fill that gap? Have you tried to learn a way to be a better, more efficient engineer or a better planner, right, to make sure that things don't run over, better ways to estimate your efforts, whatever the heck it is. What I'm really looking for is, like, are you taking steps to self-improve areas that you have identified as, you're probably not as strong as others, right? That's really what you're going to be looking for, or interviews are going to be looking for, is not necessarily what you're bad at or what you're weak at. It's like, are you looking to address that? And if so, how, right? It's how are you addressing your growth? Like, that's my takeaway against those types of questions. And I feel the best way to prepare for it. Let me expand this so we can see it a little bit better. So generic interview questions, adjectives that you could possibly use to describe yourself. These questions do come up on occasion. These are desirable attributes, right? These are things that you want to be. Again, going back to the start of the cohort and things that we keep talking about over and over again, it's less just about the adjective, and it's about what the result could be, right? Anytime that you're going to describe yourself, you're not just looking for the descriptor itself, but what does that mean? Like, how does that play out? Like, what is the result of this being an adjective? I'm going to be looking for proof, right? It's just like, I'm always going to be looking for data to support what it is that you're saying. Just the same thing here. If you're going to be using an adjective, and I'm sure that any one of these could be applicable to any of you, just make sure that you're going to be able to talk through why, right, that adjective is the appropriate adjective to describe yourself. Generic interview questions. Why do you want to work here? This is a question that people ask, right? Like, why do you want to work here? I want to know, have you done some research on our company? What about our company is attractive to you? Is it just a job, right? Do you I would say a good 25 to 30% of the interviews that I take initially with folks, they apply to the job and don't know anything about the company. And that's an immediate turnoff, right? Like I want people that have spent at least a little bit of time to understand what our business is, right? Yes, the job is important, absolutely, and I would expect that to be a huge reason of why you're applying, right? But doesn't the company matter too? Like, what if we built a product that was not scrupulous in any way, right? Like that's not a company you want to work for, right? So show that you've done a little bit of research, you understand the company, that you understand their mission, you understand their values, and hopefully they're aligned to yours. You want to be able to provide specifics here on why you want to work here. And we talked about this earlier when we were talking about building resume and the potential for a cover letter. It's the same type of thing. You want to provide specifics of why you are aligned to this role. And then of course, do what you can to focus on the employer and not just yourself. But, we really want to be able to demonstrate what you can do for them, not just about what they can do for you. I'm going to try this video. This is a good one too. Hopefully it works.
Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Ariella from Work It Daily, and today I'm going to share with you the #1 secret to answering hard interview questions. But before we get started, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment below. Okay, let's get started. For a lot of people, interviews are extremely nerve-wracking. I mean, what if you say the wrong thing? It can totally cost you the opportunity. It's important to bring up relevant, clear examples that prove that you are a fit for that job. But if you have a hard time remembering relevant examples during an interview, I've got an interview hack for you. Create a running document of examples that you can bring up during an interview. This is helpful because it can help you prepare for that interview, so you can review those accomplishments before you go into the interview, rather than have to sit there and figure out what examples you're going to use when the interviewer asks the question. So what kinds of things should you be putting on this doc? Here are a few. Quantifiable accomplishments. Quantifiable accomplishments tie your accomplishments with numbers or results, and these results prove that you offer value. Remember, numbers equal results and results equal value. Keep track of your quantifiable accomplishments so you can use them both in your resume and your interview. Challenges you've overcome. Think about the challenges that you've had to overcome in order to get that promotion, work with that difficult coworker, or get that client. Knowing this is extremely important and can actually help you with your examples during an interview. Employers want to know these kind of stories, so think about them, write them down, and put them in your document. Stories that showcase your enthusiasm for work or that reinforce your character traits. What makes you so enthusiastic about your work? Tell a story, be specific. Document those real examples as they happen. These kinds of real stories will set you apart from those generic interview answers that other candidates have. These stories are unique to you and your experiences. For example, you don't want to just tell them that you love helping people. You want to show them by sharing a story. This story should showcase why you love helping people, and it gives the employer an example to work off of. Showing enthusiasm through these stories is an essential part of the interview process. It allows you to showcase your passion for the industry, and it allows you to demonstrate your value. So, whenever you have a great accomplishment, a great story, or a great example you feel like you'd want to share with an employer, jot it down, put it in your running document. It'll help you later. Thanks so much for watching.
Very true. I do believe in that. Absolutely. It harkens back to where we started. And that goes to the SMART stories, right? Or the STARS method, really thinking through situations, tasks, actions, responses, or results. Like this is the way that you're going to tell a story, right? And if you could think through this method as it happens, right, you'll be better prepared to tell your story as questions get asked to you. Are you going to nail every single situation? No, right? Absolutely not. But you will be more confident as you are having these discussions, because you'll be prepared to talk through what your strengths and experiences are. So in regards to preparation, we talked a little bit about this over a past slide, but you definitely want to research as you're preparing for an on-site or in-depth interview where you're going to be spending a lot of time and the company is going to be spending a lot of time on you. These are the things that could help you get data to make sure you're fully comfortable, right? Understand the mission and the vision. It's public, right? I can almost guarantee that it's on their website. Make sure you know what the hell it is and that you're okay with it, right? The company size. Usually that's going to be available too, even if it's private. To understand how big it is, right? What their growth looks like. If it is a private organization, check out on LinkedIn. How many people are on there? What does it say their company size is? Like, it's just good to know these types of things, right? If it's, who are their partners? Who are their clients, right? Understand these types of things, right? To understand their projects and their products, always a very good thing. If it's public, you can look at quarterly reports or earnings calls. You can always go back to that, Yahoo Finance, Market Watch, whatever the hell you want to do, right? But that gives you great insight into who the company is, right? What challenges they're having, right? What growth, what areas of growth they are going to be focused on over the next quarter to 4 quarters. Absolutely a viable option to truly understand a little bit more about the company from an internal perspective. Glassdoor is absolutely viable, right? What I would say in regards to Glassdoor is, all the glowing reviews and all the crap reviews, like, if there's a lot of crap, that's probably true, right? But if you've got five really good, 5 really bad, it's the stuff in the middle that's probably correct, right? If you got 10 really good and only 2 really bad, then it's probably skewing more towards the top, right? So take it, of course, with a grain of salt. It is user submitted, right? There is no way for an organization or Glassdoor even to actually moderate it. So take a look at the overall sentiment and where it kind of falls, but it should give good insight into not just the company and people's sentiment, but also what interviews look like. You can actually post what an interview looks like at a certain organization on Glassdoor. You could get some insight into what to expect. Location of company offices, structure of the company, key competitors. Key competitors is absolutely a big thing, right? I think as you're talking to interviewers, what asking the question of, hey, I read about this, what do you feel is a differentiator between you and blah, 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 right? I work part of our company is still ParkWiz, right? For years, I would get, well, what's the differentiator between you and Spot Hero, right? That's a great question. I appreciate that. Like, I'll gladly talk through it, right? So it is worthwhile to understand who the competition is and what the differentiators are, and make sure, again, that it resonates and that it makes sense. Any recent press or PR, you can get that on you can set Google alerts. People still do that, I think, right? Or you could just go to a PR website to kind of check out a little bit more about an organization. So this goes back to one of the things we were just talking about. You want to make sure you understand the position and why exactly you are going to be a part of it. Be a good fit for it. You want to prepare the reasons for why your background and experience align well with the company and mission. Again, going back to the things that you've researched and understand. You are selling yourself. It is a good market for you. Great. I'm glad that you're getting out there and doing this. But at the same point in time, you want to make sure a lot of people are looking for jobs right now, right? A lot of people are looking to make moves. What's going to separate you, right, is making sure that you're offering a clear understanding of why your background and experience align well to this organization and what gets you excited about them and why they should be excited about you, right? So that goes to the next question. What is unique about you? Prepare for that. Make sure that you've talked through why you're different than the other folks that they might be talking to. Every recruiter, probably hiring managers as well, are going to take a look at you online, what your presence is. If there is anything that might be questionable, take a look at Social Sweepster or something similar, just to make sure the content that's available when someone Googles your name is appropriate. Well, it shouldn't. It can often sway into hiring decisions or in a decision to engage. Make sure that what your social presence is appropriate, right, for the audience you are looking to engage in. This is an absolutely wonderful video, by the way. And I love JT O'Donnell. I think that you should definitely look her up on LinkedIn and take a look at some of her other content. One of the big things that is going to bother almost every interviewer is if you don't ask questions, right? You got to have some questions. You have an opportunity to engage with somebody that is on the inside. ask some questions. Make sure you're prepared to do so. Also, try to vary your questions based upon who you're talking to. It's good to ask some repeat questions. Why did you start here? Like, what do you like most about the company? Of every interviewer that you talk to, but you also don't want to have just those canned questions that really don't give you any insight. This is a great little video that really helps you prepare for, hey, what questions am I going to ask, right, when I'm in the interview? Assuming we can get there.
Hey there, it's JT and welcome back to Work It Daily. In today's video, I'm going to give you 8 smart questions to ask hiring managers in job interviews. But before I do that, I just want to remind you to click the link below to subscribe and hit the bell to get instant notifications every time we create new career content to help you get ahead. All right, so what do you do when you're in an interview and we get to that end where the hiring manager looks at you and says, "Do you have any questions for me?" Well, of course you do. In fact, it is very important that you ask questions. I want to tell you that recently an employer I know reached out to me frustrated and said, "I hate when I ask that question and the person says, 'No, everybody's been really nice. I think I'm okay.'" That person, he told me, does not get hired. And the reason for that is that they have real concerns if you aren't asking questions, if you aren't doing your due diligence, and if you aren't having enough value in yourself to ask some clarifying questions to make sure that this place is the right place for you. Remember, we always tell you here at Work It Daily that you are a business of one, selling your services to an employer, and you want to make sure that it's a good partnership. So to do that, you've got to ask questions to make sure that this is the right place for you. It's like kicking the tires or looking under the hood to make sure that you're making a good investment. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the 8 questions you should be asking in your next interview. So before I break down the 8 questions, I'm going to tell you that they fall into 4 categories, and we call them the 4 C's. Now, by covering off on these 4 C's, you're going to make sure that you're asking all the questions necessary to make a good decision about this employer. And those 4 C's are connect, culture, challenges, and close. What do I mean by that? Well, connect simply is you connecting to that hiring manager, to that person that you'll be working with. You want to ask some questions to help you bond in the interview. As far as culture goes, you want to make sure this is the right corporate culture for you. Does this company believe and have values and go about business in a way that you respect and that you trust so that you can put your best foot forward? With respect to challenges, you want to know what's keeping them up at night so that you can make sure these are the kinds of challenges that you actually want to work on and leverage your skills to be successful at. And then lastly, close. You want to end this interview, this conversation on a high note. You want to leave very clear in what the next steps are. So once we know the 4 C's, it gets really easy to create questions that we can ask in the interview to make sure that we're getting the information we need. And that's what I'm going to show you next. So we're starting with connect. And the first question you should always ask in an interview is, how did you come to work here? This is an opportunity for you to bond with this individual by learning how they got hired by the company, what drew them into the company, what made them decide this was a great place for them to work. This is going to give you a lot of insight into their own decisions and what they're like as a worker. The second question is, what do you love most about working here? It's really important that you ask a positive question that lets them talk about all the things that they love about the employer. This is going to be a great chance for you to bond and share a love for the things that are great about working at this company. Plus, you're going to be able to evaluate whether or not these sound like things that you really care about. Remember, these questions are designed for you to get insight into whether or not this company is a good fit for you. So while they're very positive questions, it's also giving you a chance to evaluate whether or not it's a fit. The second C is culture, specifically corporate culture. And the 2 questions you're going to ask here are around individuals that have been hired at the company. The first question is, tell me about the most successful hire you've made recently. Why has that person been very successful in their role? This is going to help you understand who is being recognized in the organization as a high performer. And you want to listen carefully. Let me give you an example. If they tell you about a person who came in and worked 80 hours a week and took everything that they had to do and worked with no budget and really was able to knock it out of the park, does that sound like a place you want to work? Does that sound like a place with work-life balance that has their ducks in a row? No. So if they're recognizing that as a good hire, then you know this probably isn't the right place for you. Now, the second question you want to ask is the polar opposite. Tell me about a hire recently that didn't work out. Why did they fail in their role? And once again, you want to listen closely to the answer because we want to see if the traits or characteristics of that person who failed sound like yourself. If you don't think you can be successful there, if this person sounds like they really couldn't have ever won in their job, then you're going to know that this isn't the right place for you. Now, the third C is challenges, and specifically the challenges the company is going to be facing in the coming year. So that first question you want to ask is, tell me about the biggest challenge you think the company will experience this year, and how will this job help to overcome it? What you're doing there is showing them that you understand you're a business of one, you're a service provider, and that what you're going to do is help them solve a problem and alleviate a pain. So by asking them what that pain or that problem is and how you can help solve that, you're really sending a message to them that you understand your role if you get hired. The second question you want to ask regarding the challenges is around performance. How will I measure my own performance to ensure that I'm having a positive impact on this challenge? Once again, you're taking full ownership of your work, of your effort. And by telling them that I understand that I'm supposed to do that, you're sending a clear message to them that you really will be accountable for your actions. And that's a great selling point there. At the same time, though, if they come back to you and say, well, there's no real way to measure and we won't have any idea of whether or not you're making an impact, that would be a huge red flag to you, because you're going to want to be able to do that in order to get a promotion or get a raise. What kind of company can't measure your impact? That's a sign of a company that you probably don't want to work for. So you can see again why these questions are really important. Not only do they set you up well with the employer by showing that you know what you're talking about, but it also is giving you some key insight into whether or not you want to work there. Now, the fourth and final C is about close, and that's how to properly close out this conversation. So the question that you want to ask, and this is going to sound a little crazy, but I tell you it really works, is if there were some skills or experience you wish I had that would make me a better fit for this job, what would they be? This is your polite way of asking if they feel you have any shortcomings or if there is something deficient about what you've presented to them today during the interview. This is a chance for them to call out and explain any certain skills or experience or things that might make them hesitate in hiring you. And so asking this question shows that you understand you're not a perfect candidate, but that you do want to know what you could have done better. By the same token, if they do share something with you, you now have an opportunity to say, oh, but I didn't share this experience, or maybe I didn't tell you about this skill set that I have. It's a chance for you to overcome that objection, maybe realizing that you didn't give them everything they needed to hear today. So that's a really important question to ask. Now, that last question is, what are the next steps in the process? And that's because you want to understand where you stand and what has to happen next for you to get hired. You don't ever want to leave a job wondering when you'll get a phone call, when they'll follow up, when they'll make their decision. So asking this question is going to help you get that information. And they're likely going to tell you some things like, well, we have a few more people to interview. You'll hear by this date. You'd need to come back in for another interview. But at least you'll have that information. You won't be staring at the phone or staring at your email and wondering whether or not you got the job. The other great thing about that is that if they give you a date or a deadline and it comes and goes, you now have a valid reason to follow up with them and say, you know, when we spoke in the interview, you mentioned this would be the next step. That date's come and gone. Is there anything else I can do to further my candidacy? So this is a really important question for you to ask for your own peace of mind. At the same time, it's going to give you a sense of how structured this company is and really how well thought out their own hiring process is, so that you can get a clear sense of whether or not they're the kind of company you want to work for. There you have it, the 4 C's: connect, culture, challenges, and close. And with 2 questions apiece, that creates 8 super smart questions you should be asking hiring managers in your next job interview. Okay, so now that you've got the 8 questions I've given you, I want to hear from you. Is there one particular question you've asked in an interview that got a great result? Or maybe there was a question you asked that didn't get a good result? Make sure you share it with me below.
So I actually really like that video because I do think she raises some very valid points that hiring managers and interviewers are going to be looking for. And I think it does give a good baseline of insight into an organization and kind of who they are. Very worthwhile. You don't have to use obviously all of them, and nor sometimes do you have an opportunity to use that much time during an interview. But I do feel getting an individual's insight on why they joined the organization, the challenges that they're having, right, and why they're there. Like these are very valid questions, right, and ones that I do think are very worthwhile uncovering, right, individual insights. Additional questions to ask. I think this is a great question to ask either initially and then as well throughout the process, right? Just to make sure that it's consistent. Why is the position open, right? Is it a backfill, right? Is it due to growth, right? Is it due to realizing, oh man, we needed this position, but we didn't have it, right? And we're under duress. Like understanding why an opportunity is actually open and why they're hiring is absolutely important. Understanding if there's been turnover, like for the organization or within the specific team, absolutely a very relevant question and interesting to ask. Like, hey, what has turnover looked like? Who will this role report into? I think these are all very, very valid questions. And then when you're talking to your actual potential supervisor, the hiring manager, what the growth outlook looks like for the company and what are the plans to achieve that growth? How does this role contribute to that? Also very valid to ask there. And then as well, what is the team? Like, what is the actual makeup? What are the dependencies? How do we collaborate with other aspects of the organization? Are we siloed, right? Or do we get a chance to really interface with a bunch of folks? How is feedback delivered? What is the management style? Like, do you believe in weekly one-on-ones? How do you approach mentorship? How do we approach growth? Like, how do we address our individual as well as organizational goals, right? These are very valid questions that you want to ask your supervisor and potentially a recruiter as well. Make sure you dress appropriately for an interview, right? The best way to ask the best way to dress appropriately is to ask what's appropriate, right? Suit and tie, not usually relevant these days. T-shirt and jeans, probably a little bit too much. What's going to be the right mix? Ask your recruiter, ask the hiring manager, hey, just want to make sure that I'm prepared appropriately. What's recommended in regards to dress? And you should get some insight into how that happens. Always ask who you'll be meeting with. Definitely look into who the hell they are on LinkedIn or other social profiles. The other thing that I would ask that isn't called out here is not just who am I meeting with, but what's kind of the agenda, right? Like if I'm going to be meeting with, let's say, 4 different people for 45 minutes each, what are those 45-minute sessions for, right? Is somebody going to be looking to attack, approach and understand this aspect and somebody else this? Like understanding what to expect with each one of your individual interviews is always a worthwhile question. It will help you better prepare. Obviously, these are things that we have to consider both in person as well as on video. You want to understand your environment and work off cues from the people you meet, right? If a certain conversation or topic isn't jiving right with the person you're talking to, you might want to change topics. Vice versa, right? Like if they keep queuing or looking or digging for more information, maybe you're not offering, ask the clarifying questions. And I'm sure Josh touched on this yesterday in regards to technical interviews. And I don't think this is just for technical interviews. I think this is just for interviews in general. Asking a question in return to clarify what is being asked, it's always beneficial. So instead of talking in circles, you're going to try to more succinctly address what is being asked. Ask the questions, right? Make sure that you're working off of what they're asking and giving them hopefully what they want, right? Things that they're not allowed to ask you about: marital status, pregnancy, citizenship, age, sexual preference, military status, religion or ethnicity. These are illegal questions. They can't actually ask about that. There was a question that came up earlier in this cohort, and it usually comes up in most as well. Is like, what about asking about your military service? Obviously, things that are security clearance that you can't talk about, don't talk about them. You can just say as much. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to talk about that. If there are more pointed questions that make you uncomfortable, I think it is more than fair to say, even if I think the question or the comment came up that it sometimes can be uncomfortable in conversation, but just say, hey, it's not something that really makes me feel comfortable in regards to discussing that topic, right? And if they don't move on, then a little bit more about the employer or the potential colleague, right? And you can help make that decision there. What to do if an interviewer is being rude. Thankfully, this doesn't usually happen, right? But there are times that you're going to be in an interview where maybe they're ill prepared, right? They're not prepared with questions, or they seem flippant, or they seem distracted. I think it's more than fair to ask if there's a better way, right, or a better time to conduct the interview, right? Is this an okay time? You seem a little distracted. Should we move on? Like, I think that is a fair comment to make over video, over phone, or in person, right? If it does escalate to the point where they actually are being rude, I think it is more than fair to say, I'm just not comfortable with this line of questioning, or I don't feel this is the right fit for me. Thank you very much for your time. Do your best to stay polite and say thanks, right? Usually that doesn't happen, but if it ever does get to that point, feel free, right, to let them know that I don't think this is actually going the way that I want, or that I feel is best for me at this time. Thanks a lot. I wish you the best of luck. After the interview, I do feel it is worthwhile to send emails, right, to the folks that you talk to, individual emails, preferably, versus one to the recruiter and saying thank you very much. It is good to do that quickly, and it is good to cite specific examples from the conversation that you had. It does keep it short, keep it sweet, keep it professional. Right? Or if you went to the same school and go Cats, you can say go Cats, right? But at the same point in time, you want to keep it as professional as possible. But I do think that it does go a long way in regards to showing your interest in the role, interest in the organization. So I think it is worthwhile to definitely send those out, post your email. Definitely follow up with your recruiter or the point of contact. Make sure that you do understand the timeline for the decision, and then that gives you a reason to reach back out. Recruiters are notorious for ghosting. It does happen. So having something to pull back on and say, hey, when we spoke, we had mentioned that this was the timeline for either a decision or when I can expect some feedback. Asking for feedback at a minimum, I think, is more than fair, and most organizations are willing to do it. And it is a good way to make sure that you do get some sort of closure on what the hell is going on. If you are not chosen for the role, right, do not become argumentative. It does happen. Obviously, I wish every interview that we always went on was successful. I think the best way to approach the news that you are not going to be selected for an opportunity is to understand why. Ask for the feedback. Again, okay, sorry, I was very excited for the position, still remain excited for the opportunity. I'd love to use this as an opportunity to improve myself for other positions, right, or other opportunities. Is there any feedback that you can offer on why I wasn't selected for this role? And just take it for what it is. If something is mentioned, right, that you do not agree with, don't become argumentative or combative. But what you can do, right, is use that as, hey, during the feedback session, you mentioned you could send this email at a later time to either the hiring manager or the recruiter, right, that this was a gap, or this was something that wasn't met in regards to interview expectations. I just wanted to follow up and let you know that I learned this XYZ. One of the iOS engineers that I hired years ago, this actually happened, right? She didn't make the cut in regards to our initial interview. I conveyed during the feedback, well, here's the reason why you were short on these specific concepts. You weren't familiar enough with this. 2 months later, she followed up with, hey, appreciate the feedback. I've addressed these. I feel I've addressed these. We opened up a new role a month later. We ended up interviewing her again. We felt confident enough to make that hire, right? So gathering that feedback is a good way to learn and grow. Hopefully it's not bullshit feedback that is just kind of trying to cut ties, but it is something that actually gives you an opportunity to learn and scale yourself. And that's it. That's all I got for today. One of the things that I sometimes do talk about when I realize there's a chat, I didn't even realize. Well, that's from the other day. So one of the things I do sometimes feel questions on is offer negotiation or things like that. It's not part of this specific or this content, but I'm more than happy to kind of talk through that as well, or anything else that might come up that hasn't been covered either by me or other instructors or volunteers. But that's all that I prepared for today. Any questions? Anything that you all want to go over, ask. Crickets. All right.
I think our students are burnt out from their group projects that probably have questions
Totally
in mind,
fair.
but I'm
James,
sure they
I have
have.
a
Yeah,
question.
go for it, Guillermo.
James, can you just talk about just some immediate red flags that you see during interviews that we, as like junior devs, want to try to avoid in our interview process?
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah, I'll gladly do that. And I would imagine that Josh kind of covered off on this yesterday too. One of the things that always a junior dev is a junior dev, right? And any hiring manager or recruiter is going to know that, right? So for someone to basically try to sell a false set of goods, don't tell me that you're an expert in something if you're not an expert in something. Don't try to pretend that you know anything and everything under the sun, right? Like don't list C, C++, Ruby, Perl, Python, right? .NET, Java, JavaScript, like every technology that you possibly can on your resume. If you don't know them, right? I'm going to ask, hiring manager is going to ask what you do know about those specific technologies. So I think the red flag is not overrepresenting what it is that you actually know. That's number one. Number two, it's not a red flag, it's more of a yellow flag, is admitting what you don't know. We talked a little, one of the things that I mentioned earlier, and I think it is viable for not just engineering positions, but any position, is know what you don't know and be okay with that. Ask for clarifying questions. Ask, you're not going to know everything, but don't pretend that you do, because if you do and you don't really know something, it's gonna be uncovered, right? Like it's gonna happen throughout the interview process. So don't overrepresent what it is that you know, right? Ask questions during the interview process as well. But the biggest red flag is pretending you're an expert or saying that you know a lot of things when you don't actually know things, right? That's going to be uncovered. That's going to happen, not just for engineers, but any student, or not any student, any interview. Don't overrepresent your capabilities. It'll get rooted out. When you're looking for I don't want to say an entry level role, but more an entry level role into a new career here, right? Any interviewer should be able to look at your resume and understand that you're not going to be an expert in everything yet, right? But what I do want to understand is, what are your strengths, right? What are your capabilities? Can you talk through those? That's what I want, right? Like if you try to overrepresent your capabilities, that's a bit of a red flag, right? Ask for help. The other thing is that when it comes to engineering as well, oftentimes we do see we do pair programming interviews, right? And we do kind of baseline capabilities and understanding to even get to the pair programming interviews. Communication is key, right? Like ask questions around the problem, right? Talk through how you're thinking about it, right? Listen for cues, right? As you're talking to the interviewer, it's like, oh, I thought this solution, I think this might be the appropriate approach. And the person that you might be working with might say, well, that's interesting. Have you thought about this? Well, listen to what they're saying. They might be pushing you or nudging you in a specific direction. That's not a red flag necessarily. That's more a, hey, like, have you thought about this? Or, oh yeah, I understand where you're coming from. There's a couple of other ways that I might think about it. Whatever the hell it is. Listen to who you're talking to, right? Because certainly when it comes to engineering or technical interviews, they're probably going to want you to succeed. Like they're hiring for a reason, right? They're going to be pushing you toward or hiring the position for a reason. Nobody really loves interviewing, right? Because it takes them away from their day job, right? It is part of their job, absolutely, but they're not interested in wasting time in an interview. They want that interview to be successful, right? So they're probably not going to be a jerk to you. Probably. There's always jerks. It's true, right? But they're probably going to want to help you be successful in the conversation listen for cues. Again, not a red flag, but it's more a, maybe a little hint to help you get through some conversations.
As a hiring manager, how do you feel about like if a candidate's really interested? I guess it's more in the culture than what the mission of the company does. Like I know going into this first job, I'm really looking for a company that emphasizes or has built-in processes for mentorship and to grow my skills, because I know I am very junior. But if that is like the main reason I'm picking a company, because I think they're doing that well over necessarily what they're building, like, is that not a great thing to emphasize? Or is it an acceptable reason for wanting to work for that company?
Are you asking, just so I'm clear kind of on the ask, like say you're not fully aligned in the mission or the product, right, of an organization, but it does appear that they're interested in setting their employees up for success and growth? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yes, it's not that I'm opposed to it. It's just maybe not the most interesting thing, or I just don't necessarily pay attention to, it may not be the most interesting thing, but I could definitely work on it.
Yeah. So in my mind, as you're starting your career here, like the idea of finding a supportive environment that's going to help you grow and scale and mentor you, that's probably a pretty big thing, right? And I don't think that's a huge trade-off in regards to not being fully in love with the product, right? Like chances are if it's an interesting problem and the people that you're working with, right, are interested in that problem, and they're also interested in making sure the people around them are successful, that doesn't sound that bad, right? To me, like I work at a company that focuses on parking solutions. Parking is not sexy. Like it's not the greatest thing in the world, right? But what we do is we do provide, efficiency, right? We do help in a grand scheme. We're not saving the world, but we make things more efficient, more pleasant for people. That's good, right? Like I'll take that. But the people that I work with are interested in this. Like we are making something better, right? And it is a fairly complex solution. We get to work on this together. Everybody's of the like mindset there, and we are growth oriented as well. That's cool, right? It's the reason why I've been here for 6 years, right? But if the solution or the product, like I wouldn't go work for like a parking operator, for instance, right? That's a parking garage itself, and they're not doing anything cool, and people hate their jobs, right? Like I'm not interested in that. Like that doesn't sound like a good company, but I know that I can constantly be mentored and grow my career, grow my capabilities, work with people that are smart and intelligent. Like that sounds like a good thing. I'd be open to that. I don't know if that answered your question. Did that answer your question?
Yes, and just so I guess from the hiring manager, if someone comes in and says, "Oh, I'm interested in your essentially your company culture," that's an acceptable reason to be interested in the company.
So I think so, absolutely, right? Like I don't think that you would. The thing to point out here is you wouldn't say, I'm exceptionally. What you would say is I'm exceptionally interested in the organization's culture. It seems to be one that's driving individuals' growth, right? That to me is very exciting. You wouldn't put on the tail end of that, but your product not so much, right? Like you wouldn't say that, right? So you're what you're doing is you're calling out the things that are most attractive. Which is fair. Like very few organizations and opportunities are going to hit the nail a 10 out of 10, right? But if it is a product, it is a problem that is interesting to you, all the better. I don't think that if it is a product or a problem that you have no interest in, you're probably not going to like it, despite the culture or the collaborative environment being what you're looking for. You want to find that balance. But if you're even slightly intrigued in regards to what the company's up to, I think the calling out the collaborative culture and the growth mindset for individuals, I think that's fine, right? There's no reason that shouldn't be a deciding factor or the deciding factor in where you go.
Thank you.
All right, we should probably get wrapping up soon. James, thanks so much for spending an hour plus with us. But yeah, again, we appreciate you coming in, giving your advice and your insight. Hopefully we'll have you back for our next cohort. But yeah, hopefully our students take your advice and land those interviews and succeed with their getting their first job in the tech world.
Thanks a lot for having me. Sorry I ran a little long, and sorry for the technical snafu. I just feel so stupid about that. So appreciate it.
Technology is hard for all of us, trust me. All right, thanks so much, James. Happy New Year to you, and we'll hopefully see you later on this year.
All right, take care.
All right,
Thanks, James.